All right, now just to confirm, have you got the screen there in front of you? Thanks, Brad. Can you see the correct, nice PowerPoint there?
I don't see a PowerPoint yet, but let me get out of the call. Waiting for to view Nathan's screen. That's what I'm.
There we go. Should be showing now. Just want to make sure we start the webinar, everyone, that all our technical stuff's out of the way so that everyone can see everything. So we should be able to see the screen now.
Something's coming up.
So just while we're waiting for that, everyone, just make sure you've got your notepad and pens and paper or iPad ready to go. And so you can take some great notes from today's webinar. And hopefully everyone should see the screen there. Okay, if anyone would like just to reply, you'll see on the right-hand side there's a question or chat window. If someone just like to type in there that you can see the screen and hear the audio okay before we get started. And also you can ask questions throughout the webinar as well. That would be fantastic. So can you see the screen there yet? Thanks, Brad.
Yes, yes, I can.
All right. So
Are millennials
yeah,
are
good to
millennials going to be destroying business?
exactly. All right, so we're ready to go. All right, well, welcome everyone today to the webinar. As Brad just mentioned, this is all about millennials and having them in your business and what to do with them, how to work with them, and what if it's in reverse and all of that fun stuff. We're going to have some absolute fun on today's webinar. Just also like to thank the Henderson Chamber. We're a proud corporate sponsor with them. Thanks for also putting this event on. And certainly thanks to our guest speaker for today. So you'll see on the screen, Brad, again, welcome to today's webinar. Thanks for being on the call.
Thank you, Nate. I appreciate it. We're going to have a lot of fun today. I know this is one of my favorite topics, and I know it's becoming everybody's favorite topic these days. So I look forward to helping everybody out.
Absolutely. So just a little bit about myself, everyone. My name's Nathan Smith, and part owner here at Smith Durant. We do business coaching and creative media firm. And as you can tell, I'm not from Australia. Sorry, not from the US, from Australia. And so I've been here since 2007 and absolutely love what we do here in Vegas, helping our clients. So, Brad, tell us a little bit about just sort of you and your background and what got you here today.
Absolutely. Well, I started out life as a creative director, and you're probably thinking, how do you go from creative director to helping companies with their workforce culture? And that road started probably about 20, 25 years ago, and I was involved in the dot-com boom, and I didn't know it at the time, but I started a design firm in New York City, and my business partner comes running in after a year of business. He says, we have to become an internet company. And I'm pretty.
Well, it seems like we've had some audio challenges there, folks. You may have just dropped out. I apologize for that. Let me just stand by. Let me see if we can get Brad back on the line as to what happened just here. This is the days we absolutely love technology. Apologize, everyone. Just stand by. So we got a dialing coming back in. Let's see if we're back. Are you there, Brad? No, not that one. Again, apologise, folks. We're just trying to get Brad connected back on. He's dialing in from the East Coast. Again, apologise, everyone. I'm going to keep going through a couple of slides while we're trying to get Brad back on the line here. Nope. Again, I apologise, folks. Just trying to do multiple things here, get him back online. All right. Well, we'll see if we can see if he gets back in successfully in a minute. All right. Let's look at what the overview of what we're going to be going through today. So let's talk about what smart companies need to be doing. So today is all about understanding the 21st century workforce, culture, and customers. So all going well, Brad coming back in is going to be talking sort of through that. We're going to be talking about motivating and setting expectations for millennial employees. You know, even just from our experience, knowing with different clients we've worked with, helping baby boomers, Generation X, hiring millennials, and also the other way around, because you'll see in a moment the size of the workforce is millennials are certainly taking over. That's the volume that we have now and in this workforce. And thirdly, there's determine if and when millennial employees sort of will leave, because it's understanding that why do they leave? Why do they leave so sometimes quickly and abruptly? And what can you do to prevent that and have a great team working around you? So I like to show this little stat here just to give you an idea of the volume of millennials now that are in our workforce. And this equates with something like about 75% now of this workforce are in this millennial age. And you can see, the rapid growth there of millennials coming in, and certainly the baby boomers is dialed out. So that's just a huge thing. So you need to take this on board and go, well, you know what, this is not something we can ignore, and there's such a different dynamic between these millennials, baby boomers, and Gen Xers, and certainly we're going to be diving into that today. All right, let me now see if I can get Brad back again, and I'm not sure if I can dial him from here. I'm just going to get him to log out of the system and try again. Sorry, folks. He's dialed back in. We just got to get him to enter his audio pin so that we can actually get him unmuted. Oh, have we got something there, Brad?
Hello.
There we go.
Hello.
Houston, we have
So
contact.
sorry. Thank you. Sorry, everybody. You know what happens when you try to log back into GoToWebinar? They give you a brand new audio pin, and if you
Okay.
don't have the brand new one, you can't get back in.
There we
Gotta
go.
love technology.
All
So
right.
let's dig back in.
Let's get straight into it. So we've moved through some of the slides, and we're at the point now here talking about yesterday's companies, Brad. So let's get straight into it. Here we look at current companies we're seeing today, which is employees engagement and retention issues. We've got engagement, policies and differentiation between these generations. We've got, will they fall behind if they don't keep up with tomorrow's workforce? So let's talk about some of the challenge we're seeing today with the whole millennial and baby boomers and Gen Xers. So can you expand on this for us, thanks, Brad?
Absolutely, Nate. If you go back in time, maybe 100 years or so, you listen to some of the first business consultants, Winslow Taylor and people like that, and they basically felt that people at the very bottom of an organization were like cattle. You shouldn't listen to them and just treat them a certain way. And here we are. If you fast forward now, you have a more educated workforce, and they've proven that if you engage that workforce properly, you're going to get better output. Glassdoor, and anybody can look this up, but Glassdoor did a multi-year study from 2009 to 2014, and they found that the best places to work, actually, that those companies that engaged their workforce the best did 115% better than any of the companies on the S&P 500. So employee engagement is just, if you're not considering it, and I know, Nathan, you're Gen X, but I'm a baby boomer, and a lot of you listening probably had bosses that said, I pay you, why should I care about how you feel or if you're happy here?
Yeah.
And those days are over.
And it's interesting why is it that engagement, I guess, for millennials may or may not be different from previous generations?
Well, most of us were taught to sit down, shut up, and listen. And we were taught that by our parents. We were taught that by our school system. And this next generation wasn't taught that way. They expect to be at companies that treat them well. And if they're not happy, they leave. My father basically said, you get out of bed and you get to work. And this generation was taught something completely different. They were taught, Billy, you need to find your passion. And if somebody doesn't treat you right, they leave.
Yes. Yeah, it's a different mindset, and I think it all really comes back to what we were brought up as kids, or even, I know with my parents being in that baby boomer era, they just got taught what their parents taught them, and it was that exact sort of thing. It was go to work, you get paid, and do your job, and it's that old be seen and not heard sort of mentality.
Well, think about it, Nathan. Your first job, what did you have to do when you were young? You had to go to work and keep your mouth shut and listen to your boss. Am I right?
Yes, and I think as I mentioned the other day, is when I first started my job, our Australian terminology is what we start out as the shit kicker of a business, which is meant, you do everything from empty the trash to do all the menial things that no one wants to do. And that was your role, and you just took it and off you went.
I agree. Well, my first job was really a paper route, and I was expected to walk through the rain and put those, papers in the door. And then my second real job was at Hershey Park, and I was expected to work. And my dad hired me to work in his accounting office, and he didn't care. As a matter of fact, he was harder on me than any other employee. And anybody that's listening, you're kind of like, well, why does this matter? Well, baby boomers and even Gen X were kind of raised that if you're in your 20s, you enter an organization, and you have to be humble. You have to work hard and pay your dues. And you have to know where you are in the organization. Your position mattered. And then maybe by the time you hit your 30s, somebody noticed that you were pretty good at your job, and they started to, give you some management, a little bit of management. And then maybe by 40 or 50, you were expected to get the corner office, start managing a division or department, and all the young people would look up to you because you were business savvy and you had all this experience. And all I have to say is, how's that working out so far?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
It's not, because
It's
the next generation is different.
Yeah, and it's certainly, I think, the huge shift between, as you said, what's happening, the way certainly myself in the early days and baby boomers were in business from what it is today. So let's jump into, I guess, what is the millennial difference? Because a lot of people may or may not understand what actually, what makes millennials tick. What are they, looking for in the workforce? Because if you're in that Gen X baby boomer era, you may not understand this, and the opposite is, we'll talk about if you are a millennial and either hiring other millennials or hiring perhaps baby boomers. So let's a couple of these touch points here, and you can add to this, Brad. Is certainly millennials are looking to seek challenges. They're certainly now well educated, more coming out of school and college. They're certainly tech savvy. They prefer this whole team environment, this work life balance, and what's interesting is this speedy advancement. So if you could maybe touch on that whole work-life balance, speedy advancement first, and give us your opinion on that.
Sure. When millennials were raised, and by the way, baby boomers, if you don't understand millennials in the workplace, we raised them. Okay, just so you know that.
That's
So if
true.
you're confused, just look at your own kids. That's all I have to say. And that's a little tough love. Sorry to say that. But the reality is that they've been raised differently. They were raised on video games, and they were raised on child-centric parenting and teaching. And how does that change the way you work? How do you learn in a video game? The first thing you learn is you have to look for the rules and the politics intuitively. You learn as fast as you can. You make as many mistakes as you can, and that's the only way to learn. You only get good at something is if you make mistakes. And how were boomers raised? We were raised that if you make one mistake, your career is over.
Hmm.
This is the complete opposite. And here's the other thing. Video games taught them that leadership is rotational, and they have to hurry up and get things done as fast as possible, even cheat if you have to. They're called cheats in the video game world. And once you storm the castle, kill the trolls, and save the princess, forget everything you just learned because the rules change at the next level. So you don't want to retain too much knowledge. And that's the biggest change. If you notice, that behavior sounds very familiar, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And what
And then the other thing, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say sorry, keep going. I was going to ask about the whole work-life balancing because I know a lot of millennials are, hey, look, I'm here to do what I do and I do it well, but it's about quality, not quantity.
Yes, and boomers, on some subconscious level, they they were very frustrated in their own work lives. We worked hard, we paid our dues, we got our butts kicked, and at the end of the day, we lost things in the stock market and the house and the mortgage and all these other things. Well, millennials watched all this. They may not have discussed it, but they watched us work our tail off and just do all this nonsense, and they look at us like, I'm not going to wait until I'm 50 to take that dream vacation. I'm not going to sit there and jump through hoops for somebody who's not going to appreciate me, or a corporation that's going to turn their back on me when I've worked my tail off. And so they are looking for that work-life balance that maybe a baby boomer didn't really even think about having. How many people listening waited for 3 years or 5 years to save up for that dream vacation?
Hmm.
Millennials don't wait for that. They believe, look, I don't want to burn out. I want to be able to live my life now in the moment, and I have the skills to do it. And that's what they expect. And I think it's a better way of working. That way you don't kill yourself.
Yes, that's an interesting point. And which leads into sort of this next slide, and this is visual, and we've touched on a few of these things. This helps the listeners get I guess, a visual around what's happening with millennials. And we're going to
Oh
look
yeah,
back. We're going to look back on a couple of these. So let's first. I'll just run through them. So first one is faster career progression, and we sort of touched on that, but that's interesting how they want to be the boss tomorrow, not in 5 or 10 years. Next one is the
right.
whole consistent feedback. So we've got 80% of millennials are wanting that feedback from their boss, regularly, not once a year in a performance review. Then you've got this blend of work-life balance. It's like, okay, I want to get here at 9 and leave by 5, and I want to leave before my boss does. and
Right.
and then 50% of millennials would rather have no job than have a job they hate. So walk us through a couple of these and how we can understand what all this means.
Well, video games taught them to kind of move progressively quicker, but they found in a study, I don't know if you saw this, Blessing White did an employee engagement study. It was a multi-year study from 2008 to 2013, and they found that the employees that stayed the longest and loved their job the most, 91% of them cited their relationship with their boss or their supervisor. So role model mentorship has become incredibly important to help them progress through the organization. And the other side of this, Nate, also is boomers. When we went to college and we got out into the workforce, suddenly when we went into a job, they had the latest technology when we walked into a job. But right around 1984, millennials and Generation Y millennials, they were exposed to the latest technology in college. So when they came out into the workforce, they couldn't believe how antiquated everything was. So everything flip-flopped since then. And so that person who's 40-something, who spent 16 years mastering a piece of software to run their department, doesn't realize that that millennial coming right out of college has already mastered that software, and they want that same position that the 40-year-old is holding right now.
Hmm.
And it can be a little bit intimidating.
And we just had some comments coming through about the fact that these millennials sort of write in Twitter these days, and that they're maybe not like, can they string together an actual comprehensive paragraph versus just writing this short stuff on Twitter? How do you find how do you find that's working into businesses and that sort of um, short response versus, can you actually give me a conducted paragraph response?
Yeah, it is. You're going to find a few millennials that can write and can write very well, but the majority of them have grown up on copy and paste, 140 characters. Let's hurry up, blah blah blah. So you may have to, like I said, with the role model mentorship, there's a lot of things missing from the millennial, training for business. So you are going to have to show them your method, your possible way of doing it. I had a client actually I was working with, and he had a problem with one of his millennial employees because the young man didn't know how to stand up in a presentation and stop speaking because he didn't seem to get facial cues for some reason.
Gotcha.
So he said, I didn't know what to do. So he took him out to dinner, and he learned that this young man loved to write, and he was very good at writing. But he also could build a dashboard with all the technology. He was smart as a whip. So he decided to put him in charge and help out with the writing of new business proposals. And those first proposals were incredible, and then he sat him down and he trained them how he should respond in a meeting with a client when they pitched this idea, and they started bringing in larger and larger accounts, and they grew like $4 million worth of business over the next 2 years simply because of this young man being repurposed into what he was very strong at doing. So you have to look for skill set and passion and then train for what you want them to get better at, because they're incredible when they are incredible.
Yeah, I think it's something interesting that it's like, what's that perfect match? If you could take some of the traditions and ways of the baby boomers and some of the ways of the millennials and sort of morph that together in a workforce. And I think that's what we just have to realize is that, as someone mentioned, if they're just that Twitter mindset and short things to the point, how do we educate and train them so they can be a great asset
Right.
for the team? So that's something very important.
Well, look for your champions. I always say this for people. Everybody wants to take a millennial and fit them into a box and make them do things that boomers did. What did we do with boomers? You took your weaknesses and you tried to turn them into strength. And we spent an awful lot of time trying to get better at our weaknesses. Am I right?
Yeah.
So with millennials, it's actually better if you try to find them with the skill set that you need and then train them and repurpose them for your methodology.
And I think even like on this work-life balance, I mean, I've even noticed this with our own team and clients we've worked with, is that, I think I mentioned before, it's about quality, not quantity. And I know baby boomers do struggle with this because, as you said, hey, it was the old, if I started before my boss, left after my boss, then I was doing a good job. Whereas,
Right.
I see that millennials just want to get in, and they don't want to waste time during the day. They want to maximize their day. So their goal is to
Exactly.
get things done. And whereas, I remember this in the early days, it was, how long can we stand around and chat about some other stuff and find fillers throughout the day? And
Yeah, well, that's the boomer mentality. We were taught to fear authority figures. We learned that in school. You had to pass the test, and your teacher, if they didn't like you, you sometimes didn't move forward. So we took that into our careers, and we learned that when the boss was around, you better look busy. Looking busy has actually translated into 30 years later, we might be doing a lot of busy work that we could have delegated or just not done at all, because we have to be busy, but are we effective?
yeah,
And millennials have not had any of that training. So millennials just do their work, and when they're done, they sit there and they go, okay, I'm done with my work, and I go home now. Well, you have another 6 hours on your shift. It's like when I first heard this, I went ballistic. I had a young MIT graduate working for me, and I walked in at about 11 o'clock in the morning, and he had his feet up on the desk, and he was playing Doom, the video game, on our T1 connection. And I walked in, and I just looked, and my whole staff jumped up and left the room because I must have had steam coming out of my ears. And I said, well, what are you doing? He goes, oh, I'm done. Can I go home? I said, it's 11. What are you talking about? There's more work to be done. Oh, really? Why? Oh, well, I finished everything I was supposed to get done. I said, well, if you want more work, I'll give it to you. And he just looked at me like, did it ever cross your mind, David, to go ask, your direct supervisor if there's anything else you can do instead of playing a video game? And, at first I was ready to fire this guy because I didn't understand the behavior. Boomers were raised that you have a bucket each day, and that bucket is an 8-hour day, and you fill it with a stack of stuff. And millennials don't see it that way. Time is sort of in flux with them. So if they work for 2 hours and get a bunch of stuff done, they want to go take a rest, and then they come back and they want to do another hour of work, 2 hours. It's like working in our dormitory. And you have to realize some of this stuff is incredibly intense what they're doing, the programming languages and the things that they're doing. So it is intense work, and they prefer to work in a coffee shop instead of an office. And so this flowing from one thing to the next, this can make a boomer insane because we were never trained to work like this. We were trained like the military. 8 hours is 8 hours.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I really think this is where either, if you're a baby boomer listening or in that Gen X category and going, am I ever going to be able to deal with this? Or it's like, okay, I have to hire millennials because that's the workforce, and what do I need to do to adapt? And I think that's what this webinar is all about. It's understanding that we need to change. Awesome.
Yeah. I think the best companies that I think you should look at are companies like Valve, that's VALVE, Valve Software. They have an employee handbook that basically tells people what to do when there's nobody around telling you what to do. And that's kind of what you have to do. Zappos does this as well. W.L. Gore has been doing this for 30 years. DuPont has been doing it this way for 30 years. You have to retrain people how to manage themselves. And if you go back in time, again, we had supervisors all running around telling everybody what to do. And when the supervisor's there or the manager's there, everybody jumps through hoops and looks like they're working. And then when they leave, guess what people do? They slack off, right? We all did it. Don't deny it. And but now today, you have a more adult environment. And that means each person is responsible for their output. Put people in charge of the success of the company and reward them for it, or give them accolades, because that's the kind of work environment that helped Harley Davidson get out of its dark period. They started to let people in the front lines take care of quality control. And this is powerful. If you are the kind of manager who feels you have to be on top of each other all day long, and I'm the only one who can get it done right, you're going to miss out on some huge potential in this day and age, because I figured out how to engage my workforce back in the 90s, and I didn't have the money to pay them. We were a bootstrapped operation, and I was able to get out of these people 425% growth, hyper growth for 5 straight years, and it even won us the Arthur Anderson Award for fostering innovation amongst our workforce, because they'd never seen employees so loyal and so willing to just jump into the fire to make the company their company. So this sort of like ownership model, employee ownership, I'm not saying the employees own it, I'm saying the employees take responsibility for the ownership and the quality of everything in the company.
Yeah, and I think this is important where, I often say to business owners, do you want your business to be successful, or do you want to be stubborn and have your employees do it your way?
Right.
And that's a change of mindset, isn't it? Because, which would you prefer, stay where you are or adapt and be successful with the team? So which leads me into my next slide here is an interesting point that, again, this was generalizing, that 70% of the millennials say that giving back and being civically engaged are their highest priorities. So what do you think that is? Why do they have this mindset around let's change the world versus just doing more stuff inwardly?
Well, they've had a lifetime. And any millennial listening, we're not millennial bashing here. I think you guys are awesome. I think you are bringing a breath of fresh air to the next generation of business. But this is a generation that has been raised that all the problems in the world were caused by boomers. And why does somebody have to be a billionaire and be selfish and not help and just drive around in their Lamborghini and have fun all the time? Why can't they give back? There are people starving in the world. They've had 12 years of schooling where they've been shown pictures of people that haven't done well around the world, and the suffering and the things that are going on in Africa and war and stuff like that. And this is a generation that's been raised in the shadow 9/11 and a lot of things that took place in the Middle East and things like this. So they feel that companies need to be a little bit more responsible to giving back, and they want to see companies that put their money where their mouth is, and they really mean it. I don't know if you know this. A good business colleague of mine, he was working for the same company for 25 years, and every holiday they would force them to pay $50 out of their paycheck, and they would take that money from each of the employees and hand it away and say, look at the money that we gave, and it has their logo on everything and all that. That was kind of not a good way to do it. If you're going to give.
Yeah.
Extorting it out of your employees, that it makes for bad taste in everybody's mouth. Really give. There's nothing wrong with it. And by the way, it's a tax write-off. Hello.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those baby boomers watching, this little clip here that's cycling through is from a popular scene out of a HBO show called Silicon Valley, one that millennials and tech-savvy employees love to watch. So again, this may help if you want to get an idea of what they're thinking, because again, you'll see what rotates on the screen there is, I don't want to live a world where someone else makes the world a better place. Better we do it. Okay, so it's a good sort of all wrap around about helping out more than just themselves. So
Yeah.
so moving on to some actual influential millennials, because now we've talked about baby boomers and what they're doing and what's happening in business. Now we've got this. Hang on a minute. Millennials are actually now running our company. So we've got a few names here, and these are
Yes.
big ones most people know. Yeah, we've got Sophia, the CEO of Nasty Girl, business that's doing like 100 million in sales. We all know Mark from Facebook. And Evan, for those that don't know, he's the CEO of Snapchat. You probably got baby boomers going, what the hell is Snapchat? So, what do you think that, now we're seeing millennials doing what they do, um, and running these companies? What sort of influence is that now having on the workforce in terms of, well, hang on, now these guys are in charge?
Well, look back as a baby boomer, and you saw that like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, they were rare for our generation. At 19, Bill Gates started Microsoft and dropped out of college to do it. Well, now you have a generation that's expected to be the next Bill Gates and the next Steve Jobs, and they've also been trained and raised to be entrepreneurs. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to start a business, but if you've noticed, all the CEOs on the cover of Fast Company and Inc. are getting younger and younger and younger, and that can be a little depressing, I guess, to a couple of boomers. But this generation actually has a lot of business savvy, and they put their passion into their business. I'll give you a good example. There's a young man I'm coaching, and I'm on his business advisory board. Just look up plant-based solutions. And this young man's name is David Benzikin. And David, when he was younger, he had a family that came from Europe, and they've been living in America all these years, and they ate a lot of meat. Let's put it that way, at the dinner table through the years, just like I did. I grew up in Pennsylvania. And David,
three veggies and meat.
yes, they love meat. And so he just turned around one day and he said, "Oh, well, you're Australian. You guys love meat byproducts just like I do."
Yep.
But what happened is David wanted to become a vegan. And veganism is a type of vegetarianism that cuts out anything from an animal. And I mean cheese and milk, gone. That's hard. But David was passionate about it, so passionate he saved a pig from slaughter. And this was such an unusual feat that it made the New York Times when he was a kid, basically. So over the years, he started Plant-Based Solutions. And he's one of the top agencies that focuses only on vegan, vegetarian companies that create these products. He does the packaging and the advertising for them, but he also consults with some of the big brands on how to get that savvy consumer, because millennials want better products to put in their mouth. Millennials were raised on sushi nights out at sushi restaurants with their family. Chipotle, they don't want McDonald's. And if you notice all their brands like Smash Burger or Local Burger, Chipotle, as I mentioned before, it's about quality, and they are passionate about certain things. If you understand a millennial mindset about quality and food and giving back and nurturing and all this, you can take your business to a whole other level by tapping into that.
And a big part of that is what I believe is they or the why outweighs the what. So
Yeah.
look at even these three names on the screen. It was all about the purpose and the why is what drove the company, not what they did. And I think that's very it comes back from what Simon Sinek talks about with start with why. And I think this is
Yeah.
where millennials really have got this down pat, is that they understand the why, not the what. Whereas I think baby boomers were more about the what, not the why, if that makes sense.
Well, baby boomers, we would show up at a job and we go, I hate this place, and it always happens. Like 2 weeks after you're at a new job, some guy pulls you aside and says, "Hey, we need to go to lunch," and starts to tell you how horrible it is there.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, your optimism just dies on the vine. You're like, "Oh, okay, I don't want to believe it." And then after a while, you're there, and you're like, he was right. You know, Jerry was right. This place is horrible, and you get your resume together and you stay there 5 more years. And then something happens at work and you're like, I really should get my resume out again. But then it's 10 years have gone by and you have a house and your kids are at school. You're like, someday I'm going to leave here. And then 25 years is gone and there you are. Well, guess what? Millennials don't do that. They watched us get miserable and get old looking doing all this. So they'll show up and their career path is very different because they also realize if I'm going to make a good salary, I have to move quicker through from one job to the next. So, companies, you may not know this, but like John Deere does this. John Deere will go to college, all the college campuses, and they look for young recruits. And they say, look, we know you like to jump from job to job, 3 to 5 years, and then you move on. Well, you may not know what John Deere represents. They don't just make tractors. They also do wind turbine energy, green energy. They have places in Africa where they help out. And they say to these new recruits, they go, look, spend 5 years here. We're going to train you in this division. We're going to show you how this works. And if you get disgruntled, you get bored, I'll tell you what, we got another division here. Spend 5 years there. We'll train you. We'll give you all the skills you need and see how that goes. And if you don't like that, well, guess what? You could spend another 5 years over here doing wind turbine energy or building wells for villages in Africa. So they keep them moving laterally within the organization. And that I feel is probably one of the strongest tactics I have ever seen from a company. Just really, because once you find somebody who's really good at what they do, you want to keep them for a little while because you invest so much money.
Yeah.
They say that on average, losing an employee and then trying to get a new one trained is something like $180,000. That's a lot of money that's lost.
Yes.
And the U.S. Labor Department put out a statistic 2 years ago. $11 billion is lost in employee turnover. I mean, don't you want to stop some of that? And it's got to start with millennials because boomers will stay put and Gen X will stay put, but millennials will leave. And guess what? In the next 5 to 10 years, Nate, we all know this, boomers are going to be forced into retirement.
Yes.
So this is your new customer and this is your new employee. And if you want to reach your new customer, you got to start talking to your younger employees.
Yeah, absolutely. Which leads well into this next little slide here of the headline is about they're creative because they think it's necessary for change. And I love this little comment down the bottom here that this is what the millennials thinking to themselves in some sort of work environment. It's going, I guess I just expected that I would get to act more on my ideas and that the higher ups would have figured out by now that the model's changing. So how do you think this model's impacting, what's happening in today's workforce?
Well, depending on how high up you are in a company, yeah, you don't see any of this, nor do you care. You're going to be out of there in 10 years. You've made your money. You don't care. but the rest of your organization is trying to figure it out. And boomers were taught to obey the rules and to fear their bosses. That was taught to us in childhood. We were supposed to fear authority. And by the way, our authority figures, our bosses, our managers, our C-level executives, they were supposed to be the smartest people in the organization.
Mm.
And that's not quite true anymore. And so you take a look at millennials, they've been taught to collaborate and be creative, and that's what makes you innovative. And they've been taught to see their bosses and their managers as peers, as a mentor, as someone to work with. So that can look like, in a traditional hierarchical driven company, like disrespect.
Yeah.
And it's not. Millennials expect to be listened to because their teachers in the grade school system and their parents all nurtured that idea that you're special,
Yes.
and your ideas matter. And they've learned by looking at Tony Hsieh, Mark Zuckerberg, and all these other people that yes, creativity, especially with technology, is going to make you innovative, and it's going to make you an industry leader. So if you really do want to start listening to your millennials, because they're the ones who are playing around with apps and software that can actually eliminate entire departments in your company. Do you want to be the last to know about that, or do you want to be the first to know about that? And the only way to do that is to start listening to your millennial employees.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that ties in with culture is that millennials are, to me, changing the way a company culture, is done. What are the core values of a company? Because you know, you go back a little way, and if you said to companies, "What's your core values and what's your culture?" they'd probably look at you cross-eyed. And today, because
Yeah. What are you,
whereas
crazy?
exactly, whereas today it's almost like if you don't have core values or culture statements in your company, it's like the millennial is going to say, "Why am I working here? Because I don't know why I'm working here." Does that make sense?
Right. Well, that goes back to originally how we started this conversation. That is, uh, they felt that the employees were just cattle.
Mm.
And now you have business savvy people who grew up with video games and their parents talking to them a certain way, which flattened the hierarchy in the household. And then we have, um, this it happened in the school system. It was all flattened. So they expect to be listened to at such a level, and the company culture. Yeah, I mean, this just popped into my mind. I remember when somebody came to me and they had this attitude like, you don't care about what I do. And I just looked at them and go, I pay you. That's how I care.
Yes.
And I know some boomers are sitting here, your eyes are rolling. It's like, I don't give it. What? It's
Yeah.
touchy-feely stuff. Stop. Well,
Yes.
Harvard Business Review did a study, and they found that, and you can look at Daniel Pink's work as well on motivation and things like this, but they found that people want to be appreciated at work. They want to know that they are being acknowledged for the work they do, especially amongst their peers. If you pull them up and you say, here's a trophy or an award for really kicking butt, don't just give them a trophy because they showed up on time. 100 consecutive days of showing up on time. That's millennials know that whole trophy thing was a bunch of BS.
Yeah.
But if they really kick ass and they take some names, you need to acknowledge them quicker and faster because they're used to being acknowledged quicker and faster because we have to move faster. And the only way to do that is by engaging the workforce culture. Your strategy will move a lot faster if it is integrated into the values, your core values, and your workforce culture and how they see things and how they want to get things done.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I almost use the analogy of running a race. I remember in school and younger days and going, well, when you ran a race, if you went in the top three, then who gave a crap? You didn't get a medal, you didn't get anything, no flag, no nothing, right? Whereas today,
Yes.
it's the millennials want, okay, if you're on the top three, great. But everyone that finished the race will get some sort of ribbon because you did a great job.
You know what I recommend? Everybody listening, I'm going to give you one thing. I'm a martial artist in Kempo Jiu-Jitsu. Uh, look for the resumes that have black belt on it, okay? Because any millennial that went through the martial arts knows you can't earn anything just for showing up in the
Yes.
martial arts. You must earn that rank. So you're going to have somebody who kind of understands that that level of commitment and that there are benchmarks to reach. But that doesn't mean they're going to wait around for a whole year for a peer review.
Yes.
Some companies are starting to implement where the peer review happens quicker, and within 9 months, what that trajectory that used to take 2 to 3 years now can be done in 9 months. But it's employee peer-to-peer driven because they basically feel, well, he's earned it. So we move faster in the digital age.
And I'm even encouraging it to move faster. Right? When we're working with clients, we talk about things like key performance indicators and saying, look, to me, performance is about daily, weekly, monthly. Why do you need to wait a year to know someone whether they're performing or not? And I think this is where we're finding is millennials enjoy that feedback, daily, weekly, monthly about what we're doing and slightly changing direction now rather than 6 months, 12 months goes by and it's like, okay, why didn't you tell me this 6 months ago? So,
Yeah, well, I have a saying: management is the last to know.
yes,
And you want to change that. You want to have confidants on the front line. You want to have people, lines of communication coming at you. You want to be able to create trusted advisors who know how to make decisions without you. John Chambers did this at Cisco. He had to implement all these things I'm talking about in order to save Cisco after the dot-com crash. They went from $89 a share to $11 a share, and he basically said, you know what, I got to flatten this organization, I got to fire 3,000 people, and I got to give two divisions autonomy to make decisions without me, because if I have to wait for hundreds and hundreds of decisions to pass through me, we're going to go out of business. And so he started to implement a faster structure and train people how to make decisions without him, because he did not want to be the bottleneck that ruined a tech company in the 21st century.
yes, absolutely. Um, just for everyone, I know we're getting close to our 12. But obviously, we had a few minutes delay, unfortunately, so we're going to keep powering through. We've got some great content still to keep going. So I understand if hopefully you can keep sticking around as well. This is being recorded, just FYI. So we'll keep powering through. So, Brad, looking at this slide here, this obviously, and currently millennials are around that age, 20 to mid 30s, and baby boomers around that 50, plus, and the Gen X in between. So, I guess, what are baby boomers currently doing to manage this millennial generation and keep them around for the long haul? And, or even if we've got millennials managing now baby boomers and Gen Xers. So talk us through,
Yes.
how do we make sure we keep employees for the long haul, maybe on both sides, whether your boss is a millennial or a baby boomer?
Well, boomers, believe it or not, millennials admire you. They may want to complain. They may think we're all slow because we do our work right the first time. So it can take a little longer for us to get it done. You have to bring them into the fold as part of the team. You have a generation that doesn't see age as the issue. It's skill set. Boomers were taught, by the time I'm 50, I should be running this place. Whereas millennials are like, well, if I'm faster at this software than you are, then I should be the one running this place.
Mm,
So it's skill set versus age. So bring a millennial in and manage expectations, manage their skill set, and help them take a real interest in their career path aside from the work that they do as well. You want to be a role model in their world. And I know for some of you boomers, you're rolling your eyes and you're going, I don't have time for this. Okay? We need to get the work done. I've been there. I've run the multi-million dollar companies, and let me tell you something. Yeah, I have no patience, but I had to learn it. And this generation, they really want to learn. They have a lot missing from their curriculum that they weren't taught, and the expectations as well. and they have a different way of working. So you have to shift from rules into results, create a results-only work environment. Now, let me jump in here on Gen X real quick. Gen X, if you haven't noticed, boomers are tripping over your dead bodies to shake hands with millennials.
Yep.
You've been complacent too long. I think you need to step up and say, you know what? It's time for leadership and management. I think Gen X, you are the next big unsung hero that's been underrated. And you guys see both sides of the coin. You know what boomers want. You showed up on time. You paid your dues. It's now time to help bring millennials into the fold, because very quickly you're going to be in charge. And then the final piece of this, if you are a millennial and you are managing a boomer, I want you to understand the psychology that's going through your boomer employee or team member's mind. If a boomer is in their late or in their early 50s, even early 60s, and their boss is 30 years old, in the back of their mind, they believe they failed in some way, shape, or form, because our baby boomer career path paradigm, which I explained earlier, means that age is the criteria for management. And so at this other level, it can feel like you screwed up somehow. So you need to manage that a little bit. And the other thing is most of us boomers don't see the point of technology. You know, we remember the day when you could get your job done with a paper spreadsheet and a couple of pens and pencils. If the power went out and the zombie apocalypse began, we could still get our jobs done. You can't. Okay, because we know. So, you know, when you look at a boomer and you have to explain technology and all that, you have to show them why.
Yeah.
And there's only two things in a business that we really are concerned with. Is it going to make me money, or is it going to save me money? Keep that in mind. And boomers have an amazing amount of knowledge that millennials can tap into. But you also may have to explain to them that, you know, that software that takes you a week to get all this done by hand, you learned that through 16 years of trial and error. You can now get that done in 2 hours. This means you have to open up a dialogue, a one-to-one dialogue, and the boomer can no longer stand there in front of the millennial and say, you know, I invented Teflon back in the 70s, you know, and have that arrogance a little bit. You have to kind of listen to the next generation.
Yes.
So I hope that helped.
Absolutely. So looking at some major trends now in managing these, and I know we've touched on some of these, but there's 3 key words here in these 3 points, and that is that we need to adjust, we need to motivate and engage, and we need to nurture. So why are those sort of key words important that business owners today? Because again, whether you're a baby boomer or a millennial, I believe those 3 key words must be done today to have, you know, retain employees in a great environment and understanding them. So give me your thoughts on this thing, Fred.
Oh, definitely. I think all 3 of these are incredibly important. You need to create an environment where truth can be told and your people come first, and you're able to, celebrate creativity. And I think we've been going about it for a long time. You know, most management is based on military strategy, and you don't need that anymore, because we're not taking farm kids and beating them into submission and then teaching them how to be soldiers. What we're doing now is you have highly educated people working with technology, and it's incredibly important that the environment be right for them to give the most output. I work with Rob Hirschfeld, who used to be at Dell, and we put together some white papers and some blog posts together. He's the CEO of RackN right now. And Rob and I compared it to this. Baby boomers, we were trained, let's pretend we were trained in music, and the greatest thing we ever wanted to do was play in an orchestra or a symphony. Well, that meant we had to practice every day. We had to get good at our craft. And once you got into the orchestra, the conductor controlled every performance. And you hoped that you got good enough that you could hit and achieve first chair. And once somebody hit that first chair, you could not move up to first chair unless they died or they were sick one day. And nobody could improv or improvise. Well, you now have a new generation that's been raised kind of the same way. They've been trained in music as well, but they've been raised on jazz. And that requires just a simple leader at the same level as them, and every performance is different. And guess what? The leadership role, the improv role, rotates. So they're not trying to get the chair, they just want to sit in the chair for a few minutes and then pass it on to the next person. This is a very different way of working, and it can be a little scary. But I'll tell you this, and I want everybody to really, really take a look at this. We talked about this yesterday, Nate. Uh, most boomers were taught to look busy in front of their boss. If you showed up before your boss and left after your boss, everybody assumed you were the best worker in the place.
Yep.
Well, guess what? They found out a lot of people were faking it. And in today's work environments, people don't waste time doing busy work. It's about contribution and output. And what is your contribution between departments? So people can no longer hide behind looking good. You have to actually be in the trenches working. So when you take on this mindset, you begin to start looking at how millennials want to work. It is far more adult, and it is far more placing the shoulders of responsibility on the employee instead of management.
Yes.
And I know some of you've looked at something called holacracy, which is what Zappos is doing. I'm still a little scared of it, but it's a management-free work environment, and that can be very scary, especially if you haven't trained people
Yes.
on what to do when no one's around telling them what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got some great points there because at the end of the day, we all still want the same thing, right? We want a successful company,
Yeah.
and it's just, it's the best way to get there. So let's go
Well,
through. Um, if you could run us through, hopefully you can see these points on your screen there, Brad. If you can just talk us through, because these are what we call now some of the things for our listeners to actually, what do we need to do to be successful with these millennial employees?
sure.
If you can just sort of go through some of these and highlight some of the areas of some of the practical things we need to be doing.
Sure. Inspiration leads to success. Yes, you have to focus more on communicating the results expected, allow flexibility in achieving these results, more about the outcome and less about the process, clearly define and convey your company culture and professionalism, and becoming a leader ranks high on the millennial to-do list channel their energy. Everything you have on here, guess who does this naturally? Pixar. Pixar, the animation studio. And they're so phenomenal at this that they have a Pixar university where you can get trained on how to do the Pixar way. And John Lasseter actually uses mentorship all the time because when they do morning meetings, they go through, they give critiques, and then if somebody shows that they have moxie, they give them a chance to direct their first feature film. And many a young director has won an Oscar because of John Lasseter's leadership. They all claim John Lasseter is the greatest leader in the 21st century. And guess what? When Disney bought Pixar, there was a stipulation in the contract. It basically said Pixar will teach Disney, the old upstart, this young upstart was telling Disney what to do because they were so much more successful at this in the 21st century of creating, a kick-ass company culture that not only understood the industry, but was taking it to a completely next level. And guess what? The employees inside Pixar developed such great software, they actually have a software product that they sell to other animation studios. Imagine that. Innovation within the company to create a product that sells within the industry. Boom. Your mind should be blown right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's and interesting a couple of these points about the outcome and less about the process. And to me, that relates again back to that whole start time, end time. Again, I
Yeah.
absolutely encourage companies to have systems in their business, but this is different. This is talking about millennials are all about the outcome and less about how we get there. And that's where, to me, again, because I was in that middle phase of, yes, I need to be at work and show up and longer hours, but I still have that cross platform of, hang on, as long as I get the work done, does it matter what time I'm here? And I think that's what's
Yes.
important, is understanding the outcome versus the actual process.
Yeah. Well, now the person who answers the phone has to be there at work at 8:30. Yes, I get that. But you're absolutely right. Here's how millennials want to do. I mean, if we went back 150 years, as I said, when you were at work, you worked. When you went home, you spent time with your wife. Nobody was helping the company. But now today, when people go home and they come up with a great idea, wouldn't you want to create an environment and give rewards in such a way that when they're waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning and they have an idea that will make the company better, wouldn't you want them to bring that into the office? And this is the way you do it. You create such a contagious corporate culture and reward system that people really do want to fight to keep the company alive. I think it's an exciting era to be in right now.
I often refer to that as the $1 million idea from your employees, and that's that point about giving flexibility for them to achieve results. They may have a great way to do something that can, one, either save you time and money or make you more money, that you need to listen to them, or think about how they could do it differently.
Yes, I agree. Hmm.
So one of the things you mentioned about Pixar was about the feedback. So we've got a list here of things that millennials typically, that they want feedback, and here's some things that can certainly help with that. So you can certainly elaborate on this in a moment, Brad. So everyone listening, give them a checklist. So if you can write these things down and say, okay, what is it my takeaway from today's webinar is, and going, okay, how am I going to work better with my team of millennials, so to speak? We'll give them a checklist.
Hmm.
And millennials love that. Okay, give me like a to-do list checklist. I can check it off.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
think that's key.
And by the way, I want everybody to learn this. This is the dirty little secret I'm going to tell you. This isn't just for millennials. This is great business. Okay? Uh, First of all, millennials have been raised with the trophy all the time. They're adults now. They know that was BS. So when you give them feedback, they don't want to hear it. You're wrong. You're horrible. They want to hear a critique that can help them get better. And change your language. Just say, how do you think you could have done this better?
Yes.
And if your team could get involved, how can we support you to get this better next time? That's number one. Be honest in that critique, but not harsh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's,
Number
again,
two,
yeah, that's that
yeah, go ahead.
offering that plenty of help, as you just mentioned. I think is absolutely key. It's that constructive feedback is just so crucial, because I think as millennials, as baby boomers, and even the Gen Xers, we're so used to that. You made a mistake. Just don't do it again, or you're fired, sort of mentality.
Yeah. Well, how many? I had a boss take a swing at me, hit me once.
Wow.
I have another colleague, boss threw pens at him. How many of you as boomers remember your boss treating you like an idiot and calling you an idiot? Because the attitude was, I suffered, therefore you're going to suffer, and that just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
Remember, millennials were friends with their parents, so they know how to negotiate. They know how to work every generation actually. The second thing I would do, and this may not be in alignment with the critique and everything, but I would give them more responsibility. A lot of times that's what happens with millennials. We look at them as kids, and we don't realize they want more responsibility because they can handle more responsibility. Remember that brain in there, it's operating very differently from our brain because it was raised on, video games and computers in the household. So don't be afraid to give them more opportunities and manage them and help them get through this. And the other thing is you need to reverse your mentorship. Start listening, start getting involved, listen to their great ideas and give them feedback on them. And you just find that there's a kick-ass idea in there that could make your company better, but also train them for what they may not know. Training is going to become very different because millennials were raised being bombarded with all 9 learning styles being fired up. There was kinesthetic, auditory, even what they call apprenticeship in the video game world. That's apprenticeship. So they were being struck visually, auditorily, tactically, everything. Whereas boomers, we were raised with somebody at the blackboard just talking and
Yeah.
talking and talking. We didn't pick things up. So hands on with that role model mentorship, and you can really create employees that I think are going to really do well. Uh, you know the joke that's been going around. The CFO goes to the CEO and he says, "Why do we spend all this money on training if people are just going to leave us?" And the CEO looks at him and goes, "Well, imagine if we don't spend it and they stay." And that's a joke, but that's what people are doing. What's the
Yes.
first thing that everybody slashes when the economy gets bad? Training.
Yeah.
That should be the last thing that you should slash.
Yeah, that's I love that one. It's I use it with our clients all the time because yeah, do you want to keep them or train them and leave them? Absolutely. So talk about
Mhm.
what's an example of say a reward that businesses can do for millennials because he talks about here reward them for innovation. Now, what's some examples you've seen that I mean, obviously this is even for anyone that what are good types of rewards for team?
Well, I started to notice this during the dot-com boom. I had a monthly get-together, either at a local tavern where we paid, we were small at the time, so we had 10 to 15 employees, and then we got to 35, and then we got to 60. And whenever they had accomplished a huge goal as a group or a team, I would take them out to dinner or give them a bonus at that time we had events bonuses. And the other thing is we had a lot of things on deck at one point, and we put somebody in charge of events, reward events, and they said, could we do a ski trip? And I thought, I said, okay, if everybody hits their deadlines on this particular, we had 5 different projects in house, we'll pay 50% of that ski trip because we couldn't afford to spend the whole thing, but employee contribution, we'll take care of this, and we'll take care of your lift ticket. Well, oh my God, even employees who did not ski were working all this overtime just to get this done and meet the deadlines. And so rewards shouldn't just be sort of like, hey, I'm going to give you a certificate for Denny's. If you hit your numbers, if you hit this particular milestone, what we're going to do is we're going to send you and your wife on a trip, let's say, or we're going to give you a bonus this week, and we're going to acknowledge you in the corporate newsletter, or we're going to bring you up on stage at an event and give you a special reward. Remember, just like anybody else, millennials want to be acknowledged amongst their
Yeah.
peers from their bosses,
I
uh,
think I
and
think
and
that's
that doesn't. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's key to what you said about reward, because I think a lot of baby boomers, and I know sometimes myself I'm guilty of it, reward you think is just monetary, meaning like an actual dollar. But reward can be
Yeah,
so many things, as you just mentioned, which I
yeah,
think is something to make sure you think about. It's not just about the dollar in the paycheck for them. It's, you know,
right.
hey, by the way, go and take a half day off and work on one of your own projects. It'll get up on, will recognize you in front of other people, or whatever. I think that's
Right.
what's crucial. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what motivates a boomer will not motivate a millennial or even a Gen Xer. Uh, this is, I want everybody to realize this. We always had 4 or 5 generations in the workforce. When I started working at 14, 15, my grandfather was working as well. We've always had multi-generational workforce cultures, but they were obedient and compliant to what the bosses wanted. Today, we have 4 generations, 5 generations in the workforce because Gen Z is coming up, and all 5 have different needs, wants, expectations,
Mm.
and work habits. So that I know it's confusing, but in some companies they're actually saying we need a chief culture officer.
Yes.
That's going to be the job of the future.
That's well, Zappos certainly did that with that position they had for, or and probably still do, which was all about the culture and the team and what are their desires and goals and dreams and all that stuff, same sort of thing. Yeah. I've got
Yeah,
a
yeah.
I've got a question here, Brad, from someone in the audience. Is um, himself as a Gen older Gen X and has a younger Gen X as a right hand, and they've got obviously millennials, in the company. So we looks like we've got some struggles with actually the millennials listening, and also struggling with how to get suggestions across to these millennials. And so they are looking for what ideas and how do we get that.
Sorry, I wasn't listening. I was texting. No, sorry. uh, you're going to have. One of the things I've seen is some companies still do these meetings, and meetings are not productive because they're kind of a lecture, and millennials don't respond well to lectures. But if you start putting people together in teams and you start training them on how we conduct these types of meetings in the mornings, productivity meetings, they become more efficient. Like, I'll give you a good example. I was at this ad agency probably about 30 years ago, and I was very impressed by the fact that they had one production meeting Monday morning starting at 8 o'clock. And you could come in with a cup of coffee, and each team leader showed their project and the work they had to accomplish. And then the manager would say, okay, what do you need or who do you need to get this done faster? And they were like, okay, fine, this is perfect. So what they learned to do is they'd have one meeting during that Monday, and then they'd have a follow-up meeting on Friday at 3 to see how they accomplished the goals. And this company, over the years, as they added instant messaging software and things like this, what they started to do was quick questions could be isolated over the network, and if someone had to actually see the work, they could just visit them for 2 minutes and say, here's what I'm doing. Great, move on. So it creates efficiency and motivation and quickness within the organization. Sometimes with the millennial, the best way to communicate with them is use their own tactics. Instant message. Are you done with this? Can we meet? Blah, blah, blah. Here we go. Let's do this. We're going to have a meeting on Friday. I want to make sure everything's done. And some companies like Accenture, they've created software that allows you to, have a Facebook-like page where you can put your goals on there about all the things that you are going to accomplish this week, and your manager gets to see it and kind of go, how do you need support? Where can we help you? Things like that. Facebook is actually creating software for business, Facebook for Business, that allows this to happen. So you can actually see the projects that people are working on by scanning through their Facebook-like web portal or page on the intranet.
And I think even getting the gentleman that was asking this question is, particularly if you've got a small business, I think it's actually go and talk to them about, well, okay, we want to grow this company, and do they know the vision for your company? Because remember, millennials want to be a part of something. So make sure you might have to do a little get out of the office and as a team go and say, okay, why do we do what we do? Position them about the vision, and then actually ask them, because we're a small business, what's the best way do you feel that we can work together and our common goals? Do you prefer us having a meeting at this time and going through this? Do you prefer, what if we leverage technology? Maybe they love using, who knows, some Google online app and plugging things in. So I think I think communication is key there, and particularly in a small business where you might have less than 5 or 10 employees, where it's like, okay, we need to do things maybe a little different and talk to them about the best way that we're going to build. I think, though, the foundation it might be the foundation is missing. Do they know where the company's headed, and what is the why of the company, and what's the
you brought it up an excellent point, and that is, communicate, talk to the millennials, talk to Gen X. You really almost have to. I know as a boomer, I assume that this guy isn't working out because he just doesn't get it and he doesn't care, or I take it personally. And then I started to realize that thought or idea may not even be in their head, or that work habit. So sometimes you may have to say, look, Sarah, I don't feel like you're communicating in a way that I need to have you communicate. Can you show me a better way? Because the goal here is I admire what you do, and I need you to focus. I need you to be on top of this. a lot of things to get done, and let them answer why
Yeah.
or how, and let that come through, because I know it sounds crazy. Some of you are listening going, I'm giving them a paycheck. Why don't they just do what I told them?
Yes.
It's because they haven't been trained that
Yes.
sometimes in business it's about profit, period. Move your butt, or else. We need to meet this deadline now, or else. They
Yes.
may not even know those things. I don't mean to be flippant towards millennials, because I know there are a lot of millennials out there who do know that business is about money, but
Yes.
there's a large part that don't.
Yeah. Yes. So I've got a couple other questions here is
Sure, sure.
you talked about with teams, and the question is, are teams naturally occurring, or do you typically find that they should be assigned? And then also, if what if a team's put together, can you opt out of that team because you don't like them?
Yes. Uh, W.L. Gore, that created Gore-Tex, does this. When an employee comes in for the first time, they get to go wherever they can drag their desk. That's where they go to. They sit in on a team meeting, and they work with that team maybe for a week or two and see if they like them. And if they don't, they move to the next team. And they're encouraged to do this until it's a good fit. And then the team leaders and the team involved, they have to see if that person is a good fit as well. And
Hmm.
W.L. Gore thrives on new talent. They thrive on having fresh ideas and new people involved, because they're a think tank, really, and they create billion-dollar markets for the products they've created. So they need fresh, young ideas. And that's hard in companies that have been driven by hierarchy for so long. And if you are a smaller company, yeah, you're going to have to move people in and out of teams. Teams do not happen naturally all the time unless you encourage it. And having a mentorship model helps with that team driven environment. Because boomers, especially, we were taught to be individuals, and to hoard knowledge and to hold on to certain things and only reveal what we needed to reveal in order to get ahead in our career. But in today's marketplace, in today's employee uh, management, you have to share knowledge with the team and the group, because you're only as strong as your team. But that also, I want to get back to maybe millennials being in charge. Boomers are okay with having to fire an individual. Millennials may have a tough time with that, because they've been taught about collaboration and everybody's part of the team and everybody should feel good about themselves. So for them to kind of go, hey, we need to fire Larry, can you do that? They might hesitate on that. They'll look at you and they'll kind of go, Larry, we're going to help you get another job before we move you out here, because it's just not working out. It's soft management, we used to call that, but
Yes.
that's the way it is.
Yes, awesome. Well, thanks very much, Brad. So, just as a recap, because I know everyone's time's precious and we've got other things we all probably need to get onto. So, just make sure everyone that don't just talk about impact, make an impact. So, again, from things you've learned today, what impact are you going to do to make your business do something a little different? Value means inclusions and give your talent a voice. So, look at how is that relating to your team and millennials or Gen X's, baby boomers. Certainly create opportunities for mentorship. I think that's a big one. Because part of that is skills acquisition. So find the right people around you and give mentoring back to your employees. Whether it's inside, outside help, everyone should have that mentor of what are they doing to grow in their business. And the last
Yeah,
one is give feedback. And I say give feedback often. To me, feedback should be daily, weekly, and certainly
yeah,
clarify your expectations. I think that's huge. So, well,
I agree.
thank you for being on the webinar today, Brad. And anyone that's looking to get a little bit more in depth of what Brad's covered for us today, he's got a great book called Liquid Leadership. Brad, tell us where everyone can get access to your book.
You can go ask for it at your local Barnes and Noble. They should have it in stock, or you can order it from Amazon or any other online provider in hardback. It's won 2 business awards, and it's been published in India and translated in Korea. It's also out over there in the Far East. And it also comes in Kindle versions and Sony e-readers. So it'll help you understand the millennials in a much better context and manage them better, but it'll also show you how to run a 21st century business.
That's awesome. And for those that are looking to, again, take your business and look at other areas, take it to the next level, what is your vision for your company? What is your plan of attack? What is your next year going to look like? We've got a great boot camp for our Henderson Chambers. It's actually complimentary. So it's going to be in
Mm-hmm.
January coming up. So jump on our website, smithduran.com. You'll see one of the banners there just to register for that boot camp. And lastly, everyone, here's just a recap of our details. So make sure you check out uh, Brad's website, liquidleadership.com. Check out our website, smithduran.com. And if there's any way we can here to help, post something on Twitter, ask us a question on Twitter, and we'd be happy to give you some feedback, or send us an email or call us, and we'd love to have a chat. So again, thank you, Brad, for your time. I know it's valuable and it's appreciated to being on the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nate, and thank you everybody for sticking through this. I know we went a little bit over, but thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And again, thanks for the webinar. We look forward to seeing you at our next event, perhaps with the Henderson Chamber. Have a great day. Bye for now.
Take care. Bye bye.